As the summer travel season approaches, I'm excited to let you know about 2 upcoming Taste Travels, our immersive travel series hosted by cookbook authors and me, Matt Rodbard. On June 15th, I will be joining the Mediterranean dish author Susie Carace in Barcelona for an incredible week of culinary tours, cooking classes, and plenty of wine and jamon. And on September 15th, I will be joining author and baker Mauricio Leo of The Perfect Loaf for a tour of northern Italy. We will visit artisanal Parmigiano Reggiano and balsamic vinegar producers, take a masterclass in the art of panettone, and of course, eat plenty of stuffed pasta and mortadella in and around Emilia-Romagna. Both trips are nearly sold out and closing soon. If interested, write into hello@tastecooking.com and we will get you the information. That's hello@tastecooking.com. I hope to see you on one of our taste travels this summer. We are back, Kat Kinsman. How the heck are you?
Wow, that's a many layered question today. Sweaty today.
Yeah, it's a little warm in the office.
Unexpectedly. How are you, Matt Rodbard?
I am great. We are back with food writers talking about food writing. You're our second guest.
I loved your Eric Kim.
So kind.
And the two of you together, it sent me into a beautiful, beautiful trance. Like your energies just matched really beautifully. It was a very, very calming experience.
Well, I hope we can match that, you and I.
Are we calm people? I'm not a calm person.
I'm not calm at all. People would know that from the show. But we know each other for years, but we've never been on the show.
No, I was actually trying to figure out our origin point. And I do remember
CNN. You were at CNN, I think.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember the time that we actually met in person. Did you come to one of my Kentucky Derby parties?
I think I might have made it to one, and they were legend, yeah.
They were like 120 people would show up
I know,
at my house.
In Brooklyn, right? Yeah.
And who even knows who was there? I'm sure there were plenty of people.
Yeah, but you're like old school food media in the best way. I think you...
That's so funny to hear that. Because I never know where I fit with any of this. And because I started really late in my career, it's just always funny. It feels new and it feels like I've been doing this 1,000 years.
Well, I think you and I are both really fortunate that we kind of grew up during like an online focused era, but we are surrounded by so many young voices in age at least, and it's inspiring to me, right?
It's so energetic. Like so much of our team at Food and Wine is much younger than I am. I have this colleague, Lucy Simon, who just look for her to someday be EIC of Food and Wine if she wants to do that. I'm 52. She is 26.
That's
and
amazing.
She teaches me stuff on a daily basis. They have a different content media stream that they follow, and it's a different ecosystem than me, but I'm following their lead and hopefully not being too mama out there. Back in my day.
I try to avoid that with Eliza. I'm 44 and Eliza's younger than me, but I don't know. We vibe in some ways.
She's great too.
Isn't she?
I've been following her stuff for a long time. I met her at a food conference ages ago, and I just think she's absolutely brilliant. And I'm so happy the two of you are working together.
Our co-host and we were in the Word docs. We are line editing all the time.
Yeah.
Do you like line editing? Is that one of your passions?
Delicious.
Yeah, isn't it?
I'm currently editing a piece that'll be up by the time this airs on the history of how Diet Coke got to market from the daughter of the marketing executive.
Wow, that's cool.
And then her own, it's Jennifer Zeman. She is so brilliant. And I'm in the weeds with it right now in a really, really good way. I got to sit down with her in person. She lives in Atlanta. She happened to be in New York.
Oh, cool.
And we got to sit down and go through. And it was just... oh my God, my soul felt so fed that day. It was really...
When you go over line edits in person or on the phone, live, not just in the doc, that is a special relationship. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's I always say there are these moments that help me remember why it is that I really, truly love doing this.
Yeah.
A lot of his conversations I get to have with chefs that I get to have with other writers is really important to me, and just geeking out makes me really, really pleased to do so.
So please read our stories.
Yeah, the thing is, I will say with taste stories, they're always so well reported and researched, and they've got a stickiness to them.
Thank you.
And they feel like a treat.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We really do try to make it feel like a big moment. We only do a few features a week, so we have to really make them count. And it's just our writers. They are the ones putting in the work.
But you're also in the Google Doc.
Yeah, I think we're all, like Eliza and I are hands-on for all copy. So it's like a really nice, it's a nice like collaboration with our writers.
Actually, if I can ask you a question.
Yeah, what's up?
About that. So I do a thing when somebody turns in copy and, whatever form it is, I make a Google Doc, but I make a copy of it so they don't have to watch me edit on the first round, because I find it incredibly stressful to watch somebody editing me. I love being edited, but I don't necessarily want to see it, because then you have the urge to like jump in and do that. So I will tell them, hey, thank you for this, making a copy. I will share it with you once I've made my initial pass of edits.
Okay, so Food Writers talking about food writing. We're in the weeds. Live on YouTube. Thanks for checking out the YouTube. We don't work in Google Docs. So and the reason we don't is that exact reason. I don't like live editing in front of writers. I just can't do that. I don't like that pressure. I don't think they should see the keystrokes in live form, and vice versa. I don't want to see them doing the edits. So we do Word only, which is challenging because not everyone has Word, so you can export out. But of course, there's content control issues. We're really getting in the weeds with that one. But here at Penguin Random House, we work in Word. It's it's canon for us for all the manuscripts. We work in real files. We don't work in cloud for a lot of reasons. Mostly security, I would imagine, but mostly I just think it's we're old school like that.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, a whole lot of hands then have to touch our thing. And processes vary depending on if this is for print or for digital or for editing a podcast transcript or something. So, we live and die by Airtable. I will say,
Airtable's good.
Say that. But then because sometimes the editor is also the producer for the digital story. We also work in Woodwing for print thing. It's all of these things, so all the hands that need to touch it are able to get to it. But you always run across that moment of this is read only or whatever.
You get into those roadblocks. Well, I want to know, just for our audience, tell us about your role at Food and Wine and what you're in charge of, who you manage. I just like to get a sense of what you're doing day to day at Food and Wine.
I manage no one but myself.
That is amazing.
Which is, that is freeing in various ways. So I have a very strange role because it operates, I always say, horizontally rather than vertically. So, we have a food team, we have a drinks team, we have various other teams, and those, fall into very particular buckets. And we've recently flattened some of the structure with digital and print. So everybody's got their hands in everything, which I think is actually really valuable and, an excellent thing to do because people understand each other's processes. For that, we can sort of cross over and figure out what's going to work in what medium. But because it's horizontal, I'm the executive features editor. Okay, so we have to decide what counts as a feature. Am I toe stepping on anybody else if I'm doing this? Because does this tip too far into the food? Does this tip too far into restaurants or travel or something? So is this sort of constant notion of okay, so what counts as feature? So a lot of discussions that happen with that. So I will assign for print sometimes, and I'm very, very lucky in that I get to write also. So sometimes I'll get a chance to do a big swing for print and really sink my teeth into something, or sometimes do something shorter that is just quippy and fun.
That's fun that you actually can still write as an editor.
Yeah, it's I mean, whether I can write or not, it's debatable from day to day, but it's
true. Well said. Sometimes we can't write.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's I just want to say to folks listening to this, writing's hard.
It really
Even
is.
if you've been doing it for a long time, it can be a really hard and intimidating.
I mean, same with the revising.
Oh yeah.
The revising, the revision draft, and just trying to get to that perfect graph that needs to transition. That shit's hard.
I mean, I'm so lucky that I get to work with some absolutely genius editors there who save me from myself on a regular basis. Karen Shimizu, bless her, and Melanie Hunchy and Amelia Schwartz. They do really wonderful things. I trust them so tremendously with my words that they're going to do incredible work with it. So sometimes I'll assign for that and then do the edits for that. Sometimes I write for it. Sometimes I'll just help people ideate on things. We all come together on packages that we're working on that are multi-pronged. I love collaborating. So if something is more story-driven or recipe-driven, we try to figure out like what that meld is going to be. I love editing personal essays. That's oh God, I love that so much. Helping somebody who might not even necessarily think that they're a writer, help them find their voice.
Yeah.
And that is, oh my gosh, what a joy that is to be able to do. So for print, it's a certain amount of that. For digital, I have my regular cadence that I have to keep up with. So, responsible for X amount of stories per month. And, some of them, I oversee Food and Wine Pro, which is the place where we're trying to demystify kind of how restaurants work and how customers work and get to a place of harmony on.
So it's a little like trade focused. Is the audience a little bit more?
Some of it is. We've been, it's always a work in progress. Some of these things are specifically sort of for the trade that where they're trying to figure out like, hey, I really need to have a code of conduct. I need to have a business manual. Hey, these are processes that I've worked out, or here just, experientially, here's where I've come to as a chef. I just edited a piece by Kevin Gillespie where he was talking about his route to eschewing perfection in service of joy. So sometimes it'll be that. I work with a writer named Darren Cardosa quite frequently, who was a waiter for 35 years and always has insight on customer behavior. So the end goal of all of this is there's this increased animosity between the people who work at restaurants and people who dine at restaurants, I think especially, in the wake of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it is basically we're trying to say, here's what happens and here's why it happens, and try to get to a place of communication and better behavior from everybody all around. So that's, a big chunk of what I do. I will handle people's personal essays. I love big, nerdy deep dives on various subjects, regional content from people, and because I can tap into our stuff and also work with some freelancers, just try to get, a diversity of voices and experiences in there. Sometimes we'll focus in on a particular package of content. And then I also do the podcast. So I host a podcast called Tinfoil Swans, and it's long-form interviews. Usually, a lot of it is with chefs, but some of it is with celebrities who have some tie to the food world.
Yeah.
I am dorking out. We just booked Run the Jewels.
Oh, Run the Jewels, that's a good one. It'll be fun.
Then they have a product coming out.
What is it? Tequila? Is it like grilling product?
There's like a Paloma coming out.
I guess they're right.
Like Run the Jewels.
Agave spirits are big with Run the Jewels.
And one Killer Mike has restaurants too. But and
Killer Mike is definitely in the game.
Oh, so brilliant. And I've always just admired them, like their music, and I just think they're absolutely brilliant forces. But then the episode that went up today was with Laurie Wolliver. This season we've had Roy Choi and Byron Gomez. Yeah. And we'll come up with a through line for the season of things we'll be talking about. A lot of it is about immigration this season, but sort of really getting deep and nerdy on people. And we cry all the time.
It's a great show. Tinfoil Swans, it's a great show. And I like that you explain thoroughly how modern media is not doing one thing. Obviously, it's doing 12 things. Long form, short form, doing tentpole packages, a podcast.
Events, too.
Yeah, you're the classic, man. I haven't been to the classic in a decade. I love to go into that thing. That's the best.
Oh, it's such a culmination of
it's fun.
Well, and I love it best sort of behind the scenes because being with the chefs who often are intimidated to be there because it really is this literal pinnacle moment, like up on the mountain. Yeah. And, I love holding somebody's hand through the insecurity of ascending that mountain and realizing that they belong up there. It's, pretty tremendous thing. And now
you mean it's like a literal mountain?
Oh, yeah. You're going
talking about the literal top of Aspen Mountain. All the best new chefs get up there, and the celebrity chefs, and they're the big photo shoot. It's like funny that some would say you were speaking metaphorically, but you literally are holding someone's hand up a mountain.
It is literally, I had done an episode of my old podcast From the Gondola with Kwame Onwuchi and Karen Akunowitz as they were going up for the first time, and we recorded it a 16-minute gondola ride.
How fun is that?
Oh, and it's so wild.
I love it.
And special. And so, and now we have the Food Wine Classic in Charleston.
That's great. You have the fall event, right?
Yeah, family reunion. Kinsman, which we're a partner with in the summer, and it's Kwame Onwuachi and Sheila Johnson's Festival of Black and Brown folks in food. It's just a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Love Food and Wine. I've written for Food and Wine, and I think you're doing terrific work. It's just one of my favorite publications.
That makes me so happy.
It really is. I mean, and people say that to me in the industry. There's a lot of great publications, but it's like a real anchor. We had Dana Cowan on recently, and she talked about the founding of the magazine, essentially the modern founding, if you will, and just what all the editors past, how they've all flown in and out of the halls of Food and Wine. It's a really important publication you're working at,
and it started in Playboy
as like an insert into Playboy.
Yeah. And I am the unofficial historian for the brand, so I have access to the entire archive and dig from it on a regular basis.
I love that.
It's been so fun.
Well, Kat, we're going to talk about some stories that we've been finding interesting. Before we get to that, though, I want to always ask guests about recent restaurant visits. You talk about the industry and being in touch, and I know you're a huge restaurant fan yourself. Where have you been recently? Give me one or two. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I gotten out of practice of going to restaurants a little bit. Like my husband had a heart attack.
How's he doing?
Much better.
Wonderful
Thank you.
To hear.
29 weeks and 5 days ago. So
good for him.
So we
good for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, he's kicking. He's doing really well. But we had not gone to restaurants for a little while. So it's been a joy to go back out there. Hags. Oh
yeah, right.
I love Hags so much. So it's on First Avenue and 10th Street, queer-owned, and I've been talking with Telly Justice, who does it with her partner, Camille Lindley, who's the front of house and som, and about okay, how do you codify this food? So they're forever trying to sort of figure that out. During the week, it's a tasting menu. I would say they're heavily Southern influences, but it's very, very ingredient and community driven, and it is experimental and wonderful and wild. And the great thing about this particular space and this experience is that it accommodates everyone in all of the different senses. It meets you who you are, what your body needs. Everything, I think just about everything is gluten-free. Almost everything is dairy-free. There's an omnivore menu. There's a vegan menu. And nobody ever feels shortchanged. There is a wine menu and non-alcoholic pairing. And So for several days a week, they do the tasting menu. And then on the weekends, on Sundays, there is a sliding scale brunch. And I think...
What does that mean?
So pay what you can or what
okay.
you want. And
in New York City, wow.
They want there to be no barrier to entry. And so I recently went to brunch there for the first time, and it is lavish and fun and luxe. Yeah. And some people they just ask you once, oh, what would you care to pay? You don't have to pay anything, or you can pay, I think the prefix is $30 plus beverage, and then or you could pay above and beyond what you want. And it's so egalitarian and joyful and fun. And I think it's like 16 seats.
Okay, so it's a little bit of an intimate spot like that.
It's a joyful
That's Hags,
spot.
East Village.
Hags,
Love
East
that.
Village, full endorsement.
My visit, I recently went back to Lola's. I had Suzanne Cups on the show, and I loved my first visit. My second visit was even better. This is a restaurant in the Flatiron, and Suzanne is tapping into her Southern heritage, and also, Asia, like Pan Asia is on the menu. And I once again had the salad with buttermilk ranch and pretzels.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now, have you been?
I have not. I wrote a story about Gramercy Tavern last year in the diaspora of Gramercy Tavern.
Yep.
And she came up over and over and over again.
Important figure in that story's history. These crispy chicken thighs. She's got dumplings on the menu with heritage pork. And it's just a really, really, really inviting restaurant. Point of service at the wine service is excellent, and the point of service is just something that I really admire is when you remember a server. When you go back, like, wow, that's the guy from before. He was really great. So we had that experience there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I definitely need to put that on the list now that I'm sort of freer to move about the cabin.
And they just celebrated their 1 year, so they made it through that.
Ah,
I'm always pulling for restaurants, right?
Yes.
We talk about these restaurants and we have these chefs on, but once you hit that 1 year, you're like, okay, you're here to stay. Good job. You should celebrate that 1 year.
Absolutely. I think, celebrate the wins. Like our editor-in-chief, Hunter Lewis, He says that he wrote. So I also handle the Food and Wine Pro newsletter.
Oh,
was
yeah,
another
right.
thing.
I do. I received that and I read it.
Oh, good. Thank you. We put a
Saturday morning, right?
Yeah, it's Saturday
It's great.
at noon, and we put a lot of work into that.
Yeah,
And
believe me, I know we put out newsletters ourselves.
oh yeah, it's a heavy lift,
It's
and
a
they're all very
lift.
bespoke. But he had written one recently about like celebrate the wins,
Yeah.
and whether they're yours or somebody else's. So it's just a thing we say.
I love a good weekend newsletter. I'm like an airmail head. I love what they're doing.
I think they do such good things. I need to crack down and actually we were talking before we got on mic about
Too many.
so many things, and I want to buy and pay for all of them.
How?
I have 1 billion subscriptions to 1 billion things.
I mean, I feel like we just need bundles. Remember when it used to be like subscribe to 10 magazines for $10? Remember like you used to get those offers? Like,
oh yeah.
I know that's not like that really defeats the purpose of like Substack. We want to pay full freight because we want to support writing, but it would be terrific if it's like 10 Substacks for $10, $25, whatever a quarter. I don't know. Bad pricing model. I'm sorry.
And I feel like I want to subscribe to people's vision and stuff. So I sort of have to pick and choose because like you will go bankrupt.
You will, but we want to support all of our
absolutely. We do.
All right, let's get into some stories. We have a few that we want to go over. The first one is the headline: "A Shadow Hanging Over Europe: A Taste of Italy from New Jersey." Now, this is a really terrific story. It's on the front page of the print issue of the New York Times this past Sunday, which I think is great to see a food story on A1 on a Sunday. And it's all about how Trump's tariffs are causing extreme uncertainty within the Italian food producer Milou. They're freaking out in Europe because these tariffs are really going to affect them. And, Italy exports nearly $9 billion worth of foods to the United States. These is like Parmesan Reggiano, Gorgonzola, Prosecco, olive oil. But there's a concern that Americans might move on. They might move on and they might start actually buying domestic and buying products that are very similar. Parmesan Reggiano made in the United States, even though it's not officially PR. I think it was funny. Fabio Lenardi is one of the folks quoted. He's a executive at Igor, an Italian Gorgonzola producer. He's like, they could take over, referring to the Americans. And he thinks authentic Italian products could be replaced with Italian-sounding products from Wisconsin. So he's like kind of thinking about like what's going to happen when these tariffs really do kick in. And then he admits, where should we go? To Uzbekistan? Should we go to Kazakhstan? And I think his point is that U.S. gets $9 billion worth of these products a year, and there's no other secondary market. And I'll just end the recap. This terrific cheesemaker, Chris Raleigh, who our team, Clayton, Eliza, and I got to meet in Wisconsin. He made a really graceful end quote in the piece. He talks about Italian products having their own unique place in the food world and how they have 1,000 years of heritage and how Wisconsin doesn't. And he truly is like, basically, we're good, they're good, we're supporting them, they're supporting us. And I don't know if there was much of a like exclamation point or period at the end of this piece. But I think it's that these tariffs are clearly making people in the Italian food producer world uncomfortable. What do you think, Kat?
Imagine you spend your entire life learning a craft, raising a particular animal, learning a rarefied trait that maybe is generations deep. And it's not because you're being fancy. It's not because you're being elitist. In fact, it's probably because it's been your family trade for such a long time. And your whole world and your family's income and everything has been based around there. And then all of a sudden that is threatened. I mean, that's got to be some deep existential terror right there. Like, where do you go with this? I mean, I've always really deeply appreciated the fact that things like DOC that really protect products from particular places. I mean, the thing I kept coming back to in that wonderfully written and researched story is Italian sounding. And that is the thing, because I think people who are not maybe as nerdy as food folks listening to this might get, who have opted to listen to a food podcast, we're going to be sort of nerdy and look at origins of things, but it's sort of, is this the Hospitaliano version of it, or is it the real thing? Because I think you can have things that, like you were saying, like sound like they are the thing, and they could be absolutely incredible in their own right. But, I've been looking back at a lot of wartime publications and, things from the, early and mid 20th century about the emotional impact of particular ingredients. I wrote a story recently, and it was some about the fads in fat, pegged to the resurgence in beef tallow. And there was a section from a wartime book about the effect on morale of Germans not having particular kinds of fat that they were used to, and how deeply demoralizing that was. I mean, we form our tastes really early in life, and even, whether or not something is the quote unquote correct or authentic or whatever way it is.
That's what we were born with.
Yeah,
I mean, exposure.
I think about this a lot. I grew up in northern Kentucky, where we had the Skyline chili, the Cincinnati chili. If you're not from there, you're probably not going to like it. But if you're born there, it's mother's milk, and it's hard to convert somebody over to that. But if you have a generation of people who, I was raised on that shaker cheese, like from the green.
Same, of course. Talking about the Kraft product.
Yeah. And that's its own particular thing. People like to get elitist about it and say all these things. It serves its particular purpose. That is how my mother made spaghetti. And she grew up in an Italian household. They didn't use any Italian products or something. So it was, a lot of Italian-ish. So I worry basically for everyone. Like, obviously, I want the United States and local producers to have a shot at doing something. There's tremendous Georgia olive oil that is happening right now. It is so deeply flavored and beautiful, but it also is the terroir that it is. If you're cooking with that, then is it inherently a Southern dish? Is it a Southern Italian dish?
Wow, that's so complex. I haven't even thought about cooking with Southern American olive oil, what that would actually entail.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the thing that we're sort of talking about. And then if you're training somebody's palate, especially as they're coming up to being this thing, they're going to have then the version that is maybe the sort of original version of it and think, oh, that tastes wrong, or maybe we could have the flip side where people are trying these versions that are maybe don't have as many centuries of history because we are a young country. And then they finally have the French or Italian version or the Welsh or whatever it is, and have this moment where everything goes from black and white to color and really, opens up. So, I mean, all of it is, I've been very, very stressed about this. And actually, I left Hag's brunch a couple weeks ago and had a friend in town, and we went to Callistian's to try to figure out what are the things that are going to be unaffordable soon or less affordable, and really stuck them on that. And I've been asking chefs.
That's a good reporting piece right there. See what's going to actually change.
Yeah, we've run some pieces recently to say, what should you get now? And a lot of it is oils and and very particular things. But yeah, I got a bunch of things at Callistian's. I'm going to go back and buy more.
Yeah. Well, I love those thoughts. Let's move to the next story. Not Too Sweet or Too Sweet to Fail, a story on taste by our friend Mahira Rivers. Liza and I worked on this with Mahira for a while, and it was just a really wonderful experience. I mean, it talks about the great sweetification of Asian cuisine, and, she taps into the idea that, sugar was not pervasive in Asian cooking even 50 years ago, but in recent times it's exploded. Sugar in theory is not an ingredient that should stand on its own, Mahira writes. It is merely there to rein in, the pungent fish sauce and Thai and Vietnamese sauces, or tamp down the spice of a Szechuan stir fry. Even dessert, I think many people agree in Asian cultures, has been praised as being quote unquote not too sweet, which I think is a really great point. But of course, this has all changed and changed rapidly. And, Mahira observes in walking the aisles of H Mart how much sugar is really apparent in these pre-made sauces and pre-made, Korean barbecues. I was visiting with a Korean chef in Atlanta a few years ago, and I won't mention her name, but she was just like, this food is inedible. Speaking of Korean American cuisine. And she was just disappointed in this over-the-top sweetness in the cuisine. And at the end of the piece, Mahira speaks with Nicole Ponseca, who runs a great Filipino restaurant, Jeepney. It's now in Miami. It used to be in New York. And she's just like, quote, "It's not a sweet cuisine, exclamation point, referring to Filipino cuisine, while, of course, some Filipino dishes in America have become quite sweet." It's a tough topic. I think Mahir did a great job of balancing tradition with modern and trying to get a sense of, is it too sweet? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I can't say if I have an opinion. I really feel like modern Korean food is pretty great as it is. What do you think, Kat?
First of all, if it has Mahira Rivers byline on it,
yeah,
it's going to be good. That is the seal of approval. That is really anything she writes. I know that is going to be high quality in there. Again, it's one of those interesting things. If your entry point into a particular cuisine is this other version of it, that is this maybe Americanized version, that is this more modern version, that, a lot of things come about because of economics and what is the more inexpensive sweetener to use. Like, there are reasons why our food has changed. And also, memory is a really, really funny thing. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, did this thing change or did I change? Did my taste change? Like,
Yeah.
you have something that you had in childhood and it might still hit, or it might have, just some other factor to it. And you think, oh, that isn't mine anymore. And, and often these decisions are driven by the market of things. But if you say are somebody who has grown up in one of these cuisines, you can palpably and emotionally feel what the shift has been. And there's, that so long as you can still get versions of that thing, people, I mean, if some of the sweetness means that more people are going to get to experience this cuisine and have a gateway into it, I think that's a very, very good thing. And they might then veer off and find some of the things that maybe are a little bit less sweet. But I can also see the heartbreak of having the thing that you love fundamentally change. And then if those products are coming in and they're squeezing out the availability of all the other things in the market and you can't get that, that is a loss. That really truly is. We ran a piece within the past couple of years about the writer's family had a Thai restaurant, and people would come in with expectations because of other Thai restaurants that they had been to, and they, had to come to a place of compromise. Okay, do we meet the people and accommodate their tastes, or do we stick to our guns and then maybe have fewer customers? And, I don't envy anybody who is in that particular thing, because it is, and food is one of the most emotional things that we have. It's so tied into our sense of self and identity. And when any of that changes.
And just the frequency of it. We eat between 3 and 7 times a day, depending on what your day is like. And food is always around us, of course.
And, and things are trend driven. I keep hearing the word swicey.
Yeah, swicey is interesting.
So I think that some of that probably, falls under swicey. And again, like, Filipino food has always been great. Now there are other people who are putting their hands, in it as well. And, I'm always very, very curious to see what sort of third culture kids are doing with things. But again, like, you have to do a certain amount of compromise if you want to sell a certain amount of units of things. I will also note that I was glad that she called out Gotham Grove as a purveyor, which is owned by my friend Jenyu, and she imports directly.
They import
from Korea.
The best products, absolutely. Gotham Grove,
really and truly, and I hoard that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great call about Gotham Grove. That's our piece on taste. The next piece I want to talk about is one that you wrote a couple years ago. Where You Go, Chef Rocco DiSpirito. Now, I love this piece. It's long, it's reported, and I remember reading it before I had Rocco on the show, and I remember thinking, wow, this was a really, really, really personal story for you. So you're here talking about food writing. Kat, tell us about Rocco DiSpirito and how you ended up reporting this really important piece.
Oh my gosh. So Rocco DiSpirito, we all have our... we're all Captain Ahab with our white whale.
We are.
The people we want to write about, the things that we want to do. I had a transformational meal at Union Pacific it was a restaurant week in probably 2004.
Yeah.
And I'd been hearing about him for a long time. I moved to New York in 1996, and I would hear about this hot young chef and was so interested in who he was and what he was doing. And people were talking about Union Pacific as this pinnacle of cuisine and experimentation. And of course, he had, the show, The Restaurants. And
but NBC network show, probably one of the first mainstream food shows ever on American television.
Yeah, and I think it might have been on early cutting edge of reality food shows.
Absolutely.
And he took a lot of hit for doing that show. But I wanted to go in and experiment with this. And God bless Restaurant Week. I was, still trying to find my footing economically, and went in and had this lunch that blew me away. And the guy I was dating at the time, who I'm still friends with, was he was getting annoyed because he was saying, like, why does everything always have to be the best, the most, welcome to Catland, where everything has to be the best, the most amazing. Can't you have something that is just fine? And I was thinking,
what a curmudgeon. Did not deserve your presence.
He's great.
He's fine now. Okay, great.
He's fine. No, we're friends.
Yeah, you're friends.
It's good. But, it really stuck with me. And then Rocco left the restaurant. He sold it. He made a profit.
Yeah.
But then he was gone. He popped up on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh yeah.
Or he would be various other places, but he wasn't cooking in a restaurant. And this was eating me alive. I remember I met him at the first New York Wine and Food Festival, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Rocco Spirito," and like losing my mind. And he was sort of enigmatic to me, and I was just dorking out over this because I also knew how other chefs had always regarded him. Food and Wine, 1999, Best New Chef, and just somebody who had tremendous the respect and awe of his peers, but he had fallen into a place where he was not in restaurants and people were being unkind about that.
Yeah.
And, Anthony Bourdain, I think maybe they eventually met up, but like sort of he was mad because he was like, why would you waste talent like that? Not cooking. And
that's really hard for someone to hear. I would imagine Rocco must have really put that away, all those snipes about a guy who's like truly just trying to make $1 and maybe didn't want to work in restaurants, maybe wanted to be on television.
Well, I found out what the real story was because I had my suspicions about this. So we got a press release saying like, oh, he's going to be cooking at the Standard. And I was like, oh my gosh. It was sent to a colleague in mine and I said, I am so sorry to big dog you here, but this one needs to be mine. I wanted to write this story forever. I need to experience this again. So I went, had an absolutely bang up meal, really tremendous. And Rocco came out and said hi, and he had sort of like fairly guarded posture and things. And I thought like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. And so I begged his PR person, like, please let me write this story. I desperately want to write a story like about where he's been. And I had to basically earn his trust for this because he'd been so crapped on by media, just speculating about him forever. And we sat down eventually, because I do a lot of work with chefs and the mental health realm and just try to, make sure people know I'm never going to do the gotcha. I'm there to do, make people feel heard and understood. So I sat at a table in the restaurant with him and as we talked through, and I said, like, look, this is going to be, you have control over this and stuff. Like, I'm not here to burn you or anything. Like, I'm here to, I just genuinely want to know why and what are the conditions on this. And he told me, like, his mother had a heart attack and he was her caretaker for a long time. So he dropped out of everything to take care of her.
And we remember the show. She's a big figure in his life, like a big star on the show with him and important. I mean, this is like most important person in his life.
Truly, like so family oriented.
Yeah.
And he, was still doing other things. He went on Dancing with the Stars because it was his mother's favorite show. He was an early person doing like pet food things and he took so much crap for that. Mm-hmm. And he has written so many cookbooks.
Yeah.
So he's always been doing that, but he was taking care of her. And then in the course of this, he was not taking care of his own self. So he was in a wheelchair for a while. And he had to relearn how to walk. And also, this was the thing I suspected, tremendous, and I will say this, and I will talk about this because he's now since been open about it, huge social anxiety.
Yeah.
And, he had always been portrayed as this person in restaurants and stuff who was like Mr. Man about town and stuff. Like, no, he had to take acting classes to get comfortable with that. And he was always just happy sort of behind the line there.
Yeah,
and so,
like in true chef form. Right?
Really, truly. Yeah. So I wrote this profile. I had filed it. I'm on my way to the Southern Foodways Alliance Symposium in Oxford, Mississippi. And I don't remember if it was a call or a text from somebody saying, because it had closed out saying like, okay, so he's back and he's back at the Standard. I got a text saying he's leaving the Standard. Yeah. And I had filed the text and I was like, and my plane took off. So once we landed, I woke up, not woke up, but I got down to like a bunch of texts from his PR and from him and saying, sorry, I wasn't actually able to tell you that he was at the end of his contract and decided not to go on with that. So I had to very quickly rewrite the story.
That does happen.
And
Wow.
it was wild. And then we found out that there was going to be an eater piece the next week that was going. So I had to, unfortunately, not attend some of the symposium and write this story and change what the ending was going to be. And that was, just adapting on the fly.
These things happen when we were in these weeds, especially with people with PR teams around them. It happens. These stories shift quickly, and then your weekend gets a little bit shut down a bit.
And this was for print. I'm glad I hadn't gone to print yet.
Yeah,
so
true.
we got the new version together, ran it online, and then it appeared in print in the new version of it. And the course of it, I mean, the life that it took on made me so, so happy. People were overjoyed to see him back, to hear about him. The wave of love for him was so huge. And because I think it's so easy to say things about people when you don't know the real story, and because there was so much mystery around it, like he had, to some degree, there was a punchline sort of thing that was not fair. It was never fair. People are allowed to prioritize other things in their life. So this was, it felt really good to me to be able to do that. And I went in, good God, I did so much research, the digging I did, for that. And Karen Shimizu, genius editor.
Shout out to your team.
And Pete Wells, God bless that man. We've been friends for 1,000 years. And he's like, do you want extra eyes on it? And it was like, yes. He's
cool,
a genius editor.
Yeah, he's a great editor.
And I will say also, Rocco has ended up taking on a big role in my life too.
No way. Are you serious?
Yeah.
You guys are in touch still.
He's become a really dear friend, and so I got to interview him for his last book that came out, which is absolutely brilliant. And I owe it to him that Douglas has the cardiologist that he does, because I told Rocco what happened, and he got him in with the practice that had treated his mom.
Oh, that's wonderful.
This whole time. So I was making risotto a couple weeks ago, and there was sort of legend at the Standard that every single plate of risotto had to be made by him. So it was like sending him video of like, is this right? And it was like, I cannot believe I went from like doing this to be able to text him and say like, Rocco, how's my risotto?
I love that story. Well, I'm going to link to all these stories in our show notes. I have one more, a great story from Annika Shokat on the great new upstart newsletter, Best Food Blog. My old co-host Anna Hiesel is one of the team members there. Do you eat clockwise, top down, or bite by bite? And Annika has a great take here. She writes about a divide in her marriage, so to speak. While her husband takes a dish like a burrito bowl and mashes everything together, Annika has a more methodical process, enjoying each layer on their own. Charlie, who prefers a jumble, the contents of this bowl into a mushy amalgam like a barbarian, calls my methodical and decisive approach to eating psychotic, quote unquote. I have to admit, I have a similar relationship with my wife, Tamar. I think that we have different approaches to some items, mostly desserts. I think Tamar has been a bit of a masher in the past, especially with like a chocolate sundae or like a pile of mode where there's like a little bit of a cold and damp and a drier, and they somehow become one before the first bite has happened, while I'm a little more meticulous. And I think that this story really gets me thinking about the way we eat and the styles, and it's a really funny piece. I'm linking it. Annika did a great job.
Oh, it's such a great piece, and that is like such a joyful publication.
Yeah,
and
it's great.
Yeah, just like folks who I just think the world of are involved in it and stuff. And this was such a fun piece because like this is so observational, and like all great food stories, about so much more than food. So I've been with my husband for 20 years, and I met him online in the early days of online dating.
Yeah.
And they had a section, blank is sexy, blank is sexier. And I said, eating is sexy, eating with your hands is sexier. So I went in there like with, I get my hands dirty. Like if I didn't have to use utensils, I wouldn't. I love to eat with my hands and pick things up. And I do notice how other people eat just because looking for those kinships and things. Like Kate Crater and I, once the first time that we ate together, we sat down, we realized that we each sit and like pick bites off like with our hands.
Oh, I love that one. And I'm like that too.
Yeah.
I
and
like
I
that.
really, really love that. So I will eat like chicken with my hands, and I will also chew off the cartilage, and I will do all these things. Douglas would never. He's a very meticulous eater. And I just always staring at like bones. He leaves like meat and gristle on the bones, and it makes me.
You gotta clean the bones. It's the best part.
So and it's funny. Like we have a particular group of friends where we cook and eat together a lot, and so. But the great thing is we all know each other so well that, often we know sort of who's going to get which piece of which thing by how each person eats. But we've all figured out our harmonies, so people aren't sort of fighting too much. But I think it's a beautiful thing when you can figure out your rhythms with that. And I'm sure I just seemed like an absolute beast. But I save that for at home or, not at a restaurant so much.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Well, that concludes our roundup of stories. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks with another guest, and we'll go over some food writing. I want to transition to the segment I did with Eric. I'm keeping it around. Yeah. And it's in honor of the Graydon Carter memoir, and we're calling it "What Would You Pitch 1997 Graydon Carter Today?" The idea is that in 1997, Graydon Carter was sending reporters out on the road for $75,000 assignments, $100,000. These types of stories plus expenses, of course.
Wow.
Spend 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years on the story. So yeah, Graydon's on the horn. He's on the phone, Kat, and it's 1997. What are you pitching, and what's the dream story?
So on September 4th, 1982, Craig Claiborne threw himself a 67th birthday party that was also the 25-year anniversary of his tenure at the New York Times. The guest list for this, and I own an original invitation of that I found at a used
This was in the Hamptons,
bookstore.
Right?
Yeah, out in the Hamptons, co-hosted with Pierre Freny, who is his usual collaborator.
Yep.
You've got Jacques Pepin, you've got Zarella Martinez, Maher Jaffrey. It is, oh my gosh, I'm like blanking out because it is.
Is Beard there?
I don't think Beard was there. Edna Lewis was there. And I would want to pitch to Graydon Carter, okay, let me recreate these with everybody who's still with us and still alive, and have long form interviews with all of these people, and look both at 1982 as where were we in food then, where are we in 1997, and ask each person how they felt in that moment. Because my hobby these days is any time where I get the opportunity to speak to anyone who was there and cooked or participated, like, please tell me what that was like. I was asking Zarella Martinez about this. She went off on Diana Kennedy. Yeah.
Was it like a rivalry? Was it like a just a personal beef?
Oh, she had some things to say there. But, the thing is, Diana Kennedy had passed by that point. Zarella was being I love Zarella. She was being really salty about this. But a lot of it was, I sort of, these are the people who are my idols. And I think I would have had such imposter syndrome being anywhere in that company. And so actually what Zarella was telling me, she had worked for Paul Prudhomme, who had suggested her as another talent to be involved in this. So you can see, this is an incredible, document of history, and who sort of who was at the forefront of all of this right now, where all of these cuisines were intersecting, who were the Psalms, who were there. So I would ask him, first of all, build me a time machine. Barring that, what is the recreation of this thing we do now? And then, if I was pitching that now, I would have to think who would be in that modern day group of people, and find out who is still alive, have them all there, but have them each then nominate who is their successor for this. Because I always love the notion of people cooking with their mentor and their protege, and see what things have changed. We have this section of the Food and Wine Classics where we revisit recipes that have run since we started in 1978. And if the person is still alive, we ask them, like, how would you change anything? How would this dish differ?
What a great project.
Oh, we have so much fun. I just wrote one about emerald and this muffalata, but used it as an excuse to go and, see his career trajectory from his early cooking show. Gave me a chance to nerd out and look at old emerald shows. So I would pitch Graydon Carter.
Yeah, I love that story. I feel like it would have fit perfectly into that nostalgia. And of course, the Hamptons, it's like you're good at pitching Vanity Fair in 1997.
Thank you very much.
Great work. Well, I want to wrap up our convo. This has been really fun.
Oh my God, I'm having a blast.
Live on YouTube. Check it out on YouTube. And if you're there, comment. Maybe you have some links to share. Say what's up. But I love to end all episodes of This Is Taste with a Taste Check on Food Writers talking about food writing. It's a Taste Check Media Edition. So let's do it. On This Is Taste, we have guests of other discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious Taste Check. Kat, are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
What is the first thing you read in the morning, and where do you read it?
Oh my God, on my phone, which is right next to my desk.
Yeah.
I check and see if anybody texted. I usually, depending on if I've woken up in the middle of the night, I will continue with Spelling Bee, which flips over at 3 a.m., which often I have done some of Spelling Bee.
You got the Queen sometimes?
On occasion.
Yeah, tomorrow's the same.
Yeah, I will also have just after midnight done Wordle, sent that to my friend Simone Reggie, and done Connections.
I love Connections.
Yeah, it's so great. So I will look at that first, then look and see what the Times is highlighting. I'll look at Slack and see, and just check and see if there's anything I need to know for today. Check and see, just because I have friends in different time zones, see what they have texted overnight. And unfortunately, it's all on my phone.
Yeah, it's a phone. Format for you.
Yeah.
Do you read the actual paper ever?
I am a New York Times print subscriber.
Blue bag special.
Sure is, and luckily I have dogs, so I put those blue bags to use.
I've used that too for our cats. What's your first section then?
Food. I mean, so on that particular day, otherwise, I'm looking at A1. I'm always like a styles and culture person.
Yeah.
I love reading about TV.
Yeah.
I listen to a ton of podcasts about TV.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the other part of my media diet. I listen to so many podcasts.
Are you like a fan of podcasts about formats that you're not watching all the TV shows? You're more interested in the actual industry / what's good?
Sometimes, there are a whole lot of podcasts in the Ringer where sometimes I'm like, I'm not even super acquainted with this show, but I like hearing smart people talk.
Me too. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So actually, before this, we were geeking out about Bandsplain, which is Yassi Salik's podcast. And that'll go to 12 hours sometimes. My friend Joanna Robinson hosts a bunch of, a lot of genre kind of stuff, but prestige TV. So I have a lot of that. I will listen to Pop Culture Happy Hour every day. That's how I find a lot of recommendations for things. I listen to The Daily. I listen to Normal Gossip.
How's the new host at Normal Gossip?
Love her.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It took for a second just to make
vibe,
new
right?
energy, but I feel like she's really gotten into the swing of it, and it's so delicious.
I love it. So how do you listen to pods? What's the format? Is it on walks? Is it in the bed? In bed? What are you doing?
I have a speaker in the shower.
Love it.
I am that sort of dork. Otherwise, it's if I'm doing things around the house, I just have it playing on my phone. Otherwise, headphones. I do over-ear headphones. The occasional bud, but I don't love those. And then if I'm in the car with my husband, we listen to it there. But I mean, I had actually regretted that I had stopped listening to music so much. So I've been trying to get back to a balance of that. But I'm just always looking for new podcasts. And then on the weekend, I will often binge a series of something.
Just during the day, during
during the housework or doing whatever it is, and I'll just listen to this is a great 6-episode thing.
I love that. I'm the same way. What was your favorite food publication growing up?
So again, I'm 52, so we didn't, some of these things existed, but it just wasn't in my sphere so much. But I really loved food, and that has a lot to do with my dad, who happened to bring home a Maher Joffrey cookbook once.
Oh, wow.
And so my mother taught CCD, which is Sunday school, and my dad would cook on those days, and he happened to pick up a Maher Joffrey book that changed my life. And I just loved playing around with those ingredients. He was doing most of the cooking, but it changed a lot. And then I got this cookbook. I grew up in northern Kentucky, greater Cincinnati area, and there was this international folk festival that would happen every year. A couple of times I had to work at the Welsh booth because we were members of the Welsh Society of Greater Cincinnati. I'm like an eighth Welsh or something, some tiny little crown.
Own your eighth and have the food. I'm sure there's some interesting.
Today will be 1,721 days of learning to speak Welsh, and I speak it like a toddler. So, but the great breakthrough there was they had food booths for all of these different cuisines, and then there was I don't remember if this was actually affiliated with it or not, but there was this incredible, I guess this wouldn't have been, but it made me interested in international cuisines. But somehow this came into my life, and it was a book about the 50 states and their foods. And I was like, wait, different places have different food than we have? And I got absolutely fixated on that. And then I started, my mother had a lot of physical disabilities and stuff, and she couldn't always cook. So I took over a certain amount of the cooking. So I had that Betty Crocker, the Better Homes and Gardens cookbooks. And so my food media, generally speaking, was cookbooks and then food section of the Cincinnati Enquirer, which I really, really loved. And I would just sort of eat up everything I could. And then once I moved to, once I went to college and grad school, I just didn't have any money for this. I would read stuff in, the Baltimore City paper. And then when I was upstate in grad school, I would get the Village Voice. But then the thing that really sealed everything in for me was Chowhound, the Chowhound message boards. And oh my goodness, I spent so much time. I made friends on there. It taught me where to go. So it was this like...
That's cool. So who were you friends with? Anybody who's in the industry now?
So I was dating this guy named Steven Stern. He's so lovely. And I'm friends with a lot of my exes. And he works at the Times. And he sort of brought me into this. So it's funny now I'll look back and be like, oh, so that's the person who went on to do that particular thing. So I would go out sometimes, like Jim Leff would read, expeditions out to things. So there was so my twin passions were indie pop music and food. And that was my sort of really early community coming to New York. And then Stephen's good friend was Pete Wells, who then took a job at Food and Wine in 1999. And my world expanded and I started reading Food and Wine. But I had also, at one point, found the work of Seymour Britchke, who is my favorite food writer of all time. And I buy his collections of restaurant reviews and read them for sport. They are so good.
Tell us about this writer. I'm familiar. I'm unfamiliar.
So he died some years back. So he flipped careers. I think he worked in advertising, but he liked to play the ponies. So he made us...
Out of Belmont.
Yeah.
Fridays at Belmont.
So from what I understand, he made some money at the track. And so he started sending out a food newsletter. He was an independent food critic who everybody was fairly terrified of. He would write some for a New York magazine. So you can find some of his things there. But otherwise, he subscribed to his newsletter.
Like mailed in the mail.
Oh, yes.
So cool.
And, back in the days of food newsletters, I was talking to Jacques Pepin recently, and he told me he had a newsletter that came out, and it was absolutely wild. I actually own most of copies of that, and the Rosengarten letter and all these. But so Seymour Britchke would do this, and then every few years they would be combined into a volume, and they are so. It's funny. I was interviewing Danny Meyer for something, and he could quote chapter and verse what Seymour Britchke had said. Everybody wanted his approval.
That's amazing.
It is. It is the most incredible thing. And so you can find used copies. I'll periodically scan something in and post it up. He had a lot to say about Donald Trump. And some of the restaurants that are still around, I will find copies of those and with it in there. I had written one of those classics pieces about Alfred Portali and his salads and things. So I was able to find a Gotham review that he had written, and so I gave him a copy with a Gotham review in it. And it is the most delicious writing. Someday I hope. I wrote a piece for Tasting Table that is still up. I think it's weirdly, I think they took my byline off it. A lot of things.
I had that happen with a publication recently, or publication I wrote for a long time ago took
Yeah.
my byline off. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it's an odd
Strange,
thing.
right?
Yeah, but I think if you Google Seymour Britchke, that piece is
I'm
still up there.
going to do this today. 'cause I wanna-
Britchky.
Was he like an R.W. Apple type character?
Sort of like that, but he was very curmudgeonly.
Okay.
He went, Cafe Lou was his big
Okay.
hangout.
A
So
little more Steingarten then?
it was, I'm trying to think, like, he didn't, more Regina Schrambling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good reference.
And but the great thing was I went into Cafe Lou when it was still around,
Yeah.
just kind of like seeking his ghost because they were really, I found some poetry written about him. He was mentioned in various places. Regina, actually, when I wrote that piece, she talked to me about him. Drew Parent did because he could remember like what table he was sitting at and all of this. But I went in there and to Cafe Lou, and then the woman who owned it came up to me, and I was like, "Is there any chance that you knew Seymour Britchke?" And she said, "Oh, he always called me baby."
Oh, that's a great story.
And so that's where he was, and she said she felt it the night he died. And I had gotten to actually speak with his widow at one point when I wrote this piece for a tasting table, and she shared this picture of him with me with like a kind of like groovy turtleneck on, and he's my great lost
I love
food
this
writer.
memory cat. I feel like this is somebody who I wanted to know.
I think he would.
This is somebody I've gotten to know some of the old guard over the years, and it's just fun to talk. I remember I interviewed Ray Sokolov long ago, old critic. He was interesting. I think he's still alive.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, the only sort of establishment thing, he did write on and off for New York Magazine, but he wrote the Lutece cookbook.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So he's a cookbook author too. Interesting.
But I think there was only sort of one chef. I think maybe like Andre Saltner was the only like chef who like came to the service because again, everybody was they wanted his respect and they were afraid of him.
Yeah.
And I think that's the being an independent
Having
critic.
fear is such a powerful tool when you're a critic in so many ways. Well, I want to, wrap this up. Like we've really, really had a great conversation here.
I love this.
And honestly, you're always welcome back.
Thank you.
I love what you're doing with your podcast.
And I mean it when I say like, I love what you're doing with the podcast and with those on paper or on screen or whatever, like features. But like, I heard you say on the last podcast, you don't know where people are with words on screen or words on paper. God, we need them. We need them more than ever in the age of AI generation of things. I know I'm not trying to be a curmudgeon or whatever because I know it's necessary tools for so many reasons, but there is nothing like sinking into a really good piece of writing from someone who has done the research, put in the time and put in the hours, put blood, sweat, and tears into it. Like I will always read those pieces and be grateful for them, and I hope other people will too.
I love that memory. Well, I want to close and ask you, where do you want to be in 5 years with your career?
I really hope that this industry still exists.
I hope so too.
It's always so tenuous. We never know. I mean, I got a late start in it. I didn't get started till I was almost 34. I'd been a, visual person, like on the visual side of things before then. I always try to think like if the rug was pulled, like what I would do. And I've written stuff that is not food also. I wrote a book about anxiety. I've written a lot of stuff, sort of like cultural things. Like my main focus has been food, but it's, it's never just been about the food. I hope I'm still allowed to write somewhere. I'd like to write another book at some point, maybe. But the flip side of it was I've always thought that if it all sort of went sideways, I would want to get a social work degree and specialize in people who work in hospitality because I've lost too many friends to mental health issues and suicide and things. And there's a pilot program through Southern Smoke that they have at Yeshiva University that I think is doing. Yeah,
I've read about that.
Oh, they're doing the most important work. And I got to sit down with the doctor who runs that recently. And it's just, and it's such important work. And so, I really hope that like the people who I work with, the younger writers I am working with still have an incredibly robust career and so much runway ahead. I hope that we as a society have come back to really valuing the labor and the passion of things. And it's sort of a wish for everyone and a wish for the restaurant industry to keep on a track of improvement, for people to respect and love and treasure the joy of getting to go to a restaurant and the field of food writing continued to be democratizing by all people realizing that there's a place for this for them in this.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it with that. It's been such a pleasure
Matt,
catching up with you.
This is such a joy. I'm honored to be asked, and I'm going to keep on listening.
Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.